Hello, and thank you so much for joining in this video. This is going to be a guided meditation on how to receive, how to take in sacred life energy that can actually heal. So, this video may be reaching people of all different belief systems or lack of belief systems. Personally, when someone told me about this, I was what I describe myself as a devout agnostic. I was utterly convinced maybe there was some kind of higher power, maybe there was some kind of God, but we couldn't know for sure. There was absolutely no proof. There was no way to know. So I was kind of open, but also skeptical. Was kind of my belief system when I first found this information. And then I heard stories of all these different people experiencing all sorts of literally medically impossible healings. And then not only did I hear these stories, I met people. I could look them right in the eye. And they said, yes, I had this and this condition, and it healed. And it healed through taking in this life energy, this sacred life energy, and through living a few simple spiritual principles. So that opened my mind. I was, I was still, um, I was still unsure, but I felt I had this strong feeling within myself. I need to find out if this is true or not, because it sounds amazing. And I think the other feeling was, if this is true, this is very important. And the essence of what these people told me is um, there is an energy, a power, a force that is available that can help in all areas of your life and actually heal your body. Thanks for saying hi, everyone. And I really needed this information because my health was falling apart. I was 37 years young, and I wondered if I'd make it to the age of 38. I had so many health issues. So the stories that these people told, uh, you could say they're testimony. And then some of the testimonies that I'd seen, I saw a documentary film based on this information, which I highly recommend to anyone. You can Google it. It's on here on YouTube. Bruno Groening documentary film, and some of the healings that were documented there just completely violate what we think of as the laws of physics, chemistry, biology. So that opened my mind, and I tried out this practice, which I'll lead us through in a couple of minutes. And within a couple of months, I had my first healing. And it was absolutely a healing that was medically impossible. I've talked about it many times. I had a second-degree burn. That's where the top layer of the skin is permanently burnt off. I'd had it for, let's see, I think it happened in 2009, and I found out about this information in 2012. So for 3 years, I had this red mark on my finger because the doctor said that the part of the skin that grows back had been permanently destroyed. And so I saw some of this documentary film. I learned some more. I started going to meetings that weren't so different from this and doing this practice of taking in life energy. And at first, I didn't feel anything. Many people would talk about when they would do this practice or go to these meetings, they would feel the energy. Well, I didn't feel anything. At the movie, I didn't feel anything. It wasn't until my third or fourth meeting that I actually began to feel something. And then it was around maybe my fifth or sixth meeting, maybe about 2 or 3 months into this, where I had my first healing, and I did this practice on my own for a while. And then in the middle of one of these meetings, my thumb started to tingle, and I looked down, and the red spot was no longer red. It was more like medium to dark pink. I didn't know what was going on, but I watched over the next week and a half or so as it healed, as the skin grew back, as my fingerprint even grew back. So, what are the spiritual principles? Um, so, the practice, again, I keep saying we'll get to it in a minute or two, of taking in this energy. But what are some of the spiritual principles? Well, first of all, there needs to be open mindedness to the possibility that there is a higher power and that this higher power can intervene and help in our lives. If you're absolutely like, no, there's no such thing, that's not possible, that's kind of like, you know, uh, going out into the rain with a giant umbrella and being like, I'm not getting wet. If you're absolutely convinced that there isn't such a thing as a higher power, many people are convinced there's a higher power, but they're convinced it can't help them. So if that's your belief, if that's your conviction, then this really isn't the path or practice for you. I'm not saying you have to believe, but what I'm saying is you need to have an open mind. You at least need to be open minded, which is what I was. I didn't have a belief. As I said, I was quite skeptical, but I was open minded, and that was enough. So there needs to be open mindedness to the possibility. If you already have a spiritual or religious faith, please ask yourself, is it possible? Because again, many people believe in, they may have different words: God, higher power, spirit, Brahman, Jehovah. There's many different traditions, many different words. A supreme being, a supreme entity, a creator, the source of everything. Now, here's the question: are you open to the possibility that it can help? Because many people think there's something out there, but they don't think it really cares or that it's really available to help. So that's necessary. Again, not the belief, but the openness to the possibility. Now, something that I was taught that was revolutionary to me was the idea of the need for a spiritual helper. Now, if you look at different spiritual and religious traditions, most, not all, but most say that on the spiritual path, it's absolutely necessary to have, there's different words: a guru, a savior, a lama, a teacher, a helper, a guardian, a protector. The person, Bruno Groening, who all this information that I'm sharing came from, he just described it very simply: a spiritual friend, someone who can help you experience this divine connection. Bruno Groening explained it that most people have moved so far away from God and so far away from nature that most people aren't able to really take in this divine energy on their own. They need they need assistance. And so I heard all these stories of people asking this person, Bruno Groening, who was no longer in his body, but just asking him for help and asking him to help them with their illnesses, help them receive this divine energy. And I heard some pretty amazing stories and I started trying it. I kind of figured I had nothing to lose. As I said, I thought I was going to die. But Bruno Groening never said he was the only helper or the only person who could help people make this divine connection. He spoke very highly of, of Jesus. He had great respect for what he called the yogis of India. He spoke about a book called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, which I've read some of it. It's a very interesting book. It's about all these masters of life, beings who literally can manipulate matter just with their minds. So Bruno Groening, again, never said that he was the only helper, and he never said you have to have a specific helper, but he was very adamant that most people need, again, whether you call it teacher, friend, helper, a spiritual helper. So if you don't have such a being, I would invite you to ask Bruno Groening for help. Ask him very simply, hey, you can even say, hey, is this true? Or ask your own helper, whether that be Christ or Mother Mary or an angel. But it has to be a being that you have real trust in. It has to be a being that you really, really trust, that you feel like you could trust your heart and your soul. So, and we need to not dwell on, talk about, and think about the illness. I don't know what tradition it's from, but there's a saying that every thought is a prayer. Most people have the very bad habit of just talking about and thinking about their illness over and over and over and just talking to anyone who will listen. And so it's very important to give the illness over to your helper, to your spiritual friend, and then to not think about it and not talk about it unless it's absolutely necessary. Sure, if you're going to see a doctor, you need to talk about it. But otherwise, it's absolutely not only not necessary to talk about it, it's harmful. Unless, again, unless it's necessary. There might be certain, um, in your job or a certain social situation where you need to communicate to someone, hey, I have this. But otherwise, we need to learn the habit of not talking and not thinking about it. Bruno Groening said that such thoughts block the divine energy and that such thoughts are literally holding on to the illness. So we don't need to judge ourselves, but we need to recognize it as a bad habit. We don't need to judge ourselves if we're thinking and talking and dwelling on it. We need to recognize it's a bad habit and determine to change, and then ask for help to change. Ask Bruno, Christ, your helper, please help me to not think about this, and then give the illness, give the burden away to such a person. Ultimately, the healing path is actually the spiritual path, meaning that if we want to be healed and uh, if we want to be healthy and happy, we need to live a good life. Now, when I first came to this, I couldn't hear that because I was just desperate. I was desperate to be healed, and I, I was afraid of dying. I was starting to lose my vision, so I was also afraid of going blind. I was afraid of dying. So healing is just the beginning, and um, ultimately, um, ultimately, this path or any valid spiritual path is going to be about living harmoniously with ourselves, with others, with nature, and ultimately being in communion with this higher power. But again, when I first found this, I couldn't think about that at all. All I could think about was healing. And that's okay if that's where you are. And there are some days where I was like, I don't want to try and live a good life. And I don't, and We're all human beings. We're all on this path. I certainly haven't perfected it, and I don't know anyone who has. Maybe I've met one saint who, but they never made such a claim about themselves. So those are a few of the basic principles. Mm, okay, that's very important. So someone wrote, I have difficulties because I always expecting for healing and every day do healing energy and meditation and can't stop the expectation. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So the way I look at it is, and the way Bruno Groening explained it is, um, the timing of a healing is not up to us. So this person who shared that, calling it, I've done it. Everyone's done it. Of like, oh, I'm going to make this healing happen. Well, according to Bruno Groening, that's not how healing works. Healing is in God's hands. We have to do our part, and God has to do their part. God has to do his, her, its part. so, so first and foremost, you can ask your helper or ask God for help to give away the expectation and surrender the timing of it. Because ultimately, if I'm what Bruno Groening called what you're doing, and I've done it and everyone does it, is a demand. It's basically like me ordering God, like, okay, God, healing now. But the thing is, by doing that, I'm playing God, and so are you, and so is anyone who and so that's not how healing works. I'm not God. I'm not in charge of the universe. If I was in charge of the universe, um, well, it'd probably be a mess. Luckily, I'm not. So, so that's the first thing: is the recognition that uh, none of us are in charge of life, and that includes healing. The next thing is asking your helper, asking God for their help to let go of this expectation, to change this habit of demanding a healing. Now it's a fine line. We want to expect the good, but we have to surrender the timing. Bruno Groening said the good will prevail, but the how and the when is not up to us. What I understand that to mean, the good will prevail. He even went so far as to say that paradise will be restored on this planet. But the timing of that, not my, not up to me. It's my understanding that the same is the case with healing. And let me think if I have my book handy. Um, yeah, I'm going to read something that Bruno Groening said. One moment. On this topic because it's a trap that many people fall into. I've fallen into it. And here's what Bruno Groening has to say on this topic. One moment. Okay. Bruno Groening said, I must indeed know more, see more, hear more, and feel more than other people, so that I can know who can be helped and who cannot, or may not yet be freed from their present afflicted condition, because they do not yet have any spiritual ripeness or maturity of their own, or because they must learn something from it. So instead of saying it's okay to ask for healing, but then if the healing doesn't come, then what we need to ask for is Please, please, God, please, my helper, help me to grow. Help me to learn. Help me to become spiritually mature. We need to, it's about letting, as they say, let go and let God. So it's very important. That was from Powers of the Spirit, page 96. Wow. So Anisha wrote that she got a healing while watching the documentary. That happens. Many people have. Um, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing. So right now, what I'm talking about is a healing where, yes, the healing's up to God, but we have our part. We tune in, we ask God for help, um, and healings happen spontaneously. I heard a story of someone who went to a Bruno Groening website and a healing just happened. This person just clicked on the website. Here, Anisha got a healing from the documentary. I've met other people who've had healings from watching the documentary film. I've lost count, but I think we've had 8 healings happen during live community hours that I've led. The person just shows up and tunes in, and a healing happens. So there are spontaneous, that's absolutely part of this path. Um, so we've talked a little bit, looked at some of the fundamental ideas of Bruno's teaching and about healing. Let's put all this into practice now. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards, back in a relaxed upright position, if possible, not leaning against your chair. And close your eyes. Now, really pour your heart out. All your worries, fears, burdens, resentments to your spiritual helper. Giving away all illness. And now asking the Supreme, asking your spiritual helper, please, please, I want to be healthy. Please help me to receive the healing life energy and observe your body, noticing what you feel, having the will, the intention to take this energy in. That's the practice, observing the body with the intention to take in this healing energy. We'll sit for a few minutes. Every now and then I'll come in with a little reminder. Noticing what you feel. Taking in the good. Relaxing. If your mind is all over the place, repeating a prayer or mantra, watching your breath and counting, doing something to still the mind. But the practice is to observe the body. Taking in the good. And trusting all your problems, all your worries to higher power, to your helper. asking for grace, asking for mercy, asking for forgiveness. Taking in this divine energy, welcoming the peaceful quiet. Noticing what you feel, having the intention to take this energy in. Opening to the good, receiving the good. If anyone wants to type in what they're feeling, please do. Anisha, if you want to share the healing that you experienced, please do. If any negative thoughts arise, any thoughts of the illness, once again, hand them over to your helper. That's beautiful. Anisha just shared that. And so, just to be clear, Anisha, is it completely healed now? Okay. Okay, good. So that would be a help and just a little feedback. So until something's completely healed, please don't tell any of us the name of the illness. Now, like I said, it's okay. So you had a help. So a healing is when something is absolutely just taken away, and I want to advise you um, to not tell any of us, because basically, in essence, what you just did is you told all of us this illness, and now each one of us has this thought in our mind that you have this and this particular illness. And so I'm going to give that thought away. But the thing is you don't want to talk about it until it's absolutely healed. What you could say is, I have this, I have something that's healing, and I had a temporary help where the symptoms, um, just completely vanished. And so I had that too. There was one condition where it wasn't fully healed yet. And I went to the documentary film, and for that day, the symptoms vanished. Then the next day, the symptoms came back, and eventually it completely healed. But please, don't tell me, don't tell other people, for your well-being, until something's completely healed. All right, dear ones. So we're going to wrap up here. To anyone who's new, a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for saying hi, Magdalena, Anisha, and Colin. Anisha, thanks for inviting a friend and sharing a help. Again, that's not a healing. And so let's be really clear. A spiritual healing is where an illness is literally taken away, where the illness is just gone. So thank you so much for sharing your help. And once again, I want to invite you and all of us to not talk about an illness um, until it's completely healed. Thanks so much. See, yeah. So I just need to be really firm. Anisha, what you're doing right now is you're talking about your illness. You wrote, yes, yes. I told many people, and that's when it came back after 3 to 4 days. So that's not good for you, and that's absolutely not welcome at a community hour. In essence, it's the spiritual equivalent of swearing and cussing. You're talking about evil. I'm not saying you're evil or that you're bad or you're wrong, and it's harmful for you. Um, and it's actually it kind of brings down the community hour a little bit. So please don't don't talk about illness any further at community hours, at these gatherings, and in your life. I would strongly advise you to not talk about it unless absolutely necessary. She wrote zipped. We're all learning. I'm learning. This is a great reminder. It's one of humanity's greatest habits. Talking about talking about negative things when it's not necessary. At a doctor, it's necessary. For example, if you have something that hasn't healed yet and you're applying for a job, you need to let the person know if it limits your ability to work. Um, in a close friendship or relationship, if it has a direct impact, then of course, yes. Um, or it's up to each person. Um, so thank you, Anisha. Actually, we got to have some good learning happen because of this. I wish everyone a beautiful morning, afternoon, and evening. And thanks everyone for joining in. Take care. Much love.